So we're here with Mr. Lindenberg today, who has kindly agreed to answer some of our questions. And well, we want to talk about the attitude of the Polish population, especially considering young people, towards foreigners in their country. There's a stereotype that Polish people can be very close-minded and, well, unfriendly towards foreigners to the point of being xenophobic or racist. My first question would be, what is your perception of the current situation in Poland? Do you agree that people are close-minded and don't want foreigners in their country?
Poles, on the average, did not go worse than other nations. On the average, which means the hostility, prejudice, anxiety, whatever, toward foreigners were more or less on the same level as in other countries. What struck me was it's not like Poles are xenophobic and Germans are not, for example. It's certainly wrong if you say Poles are xenophobic or Poles are not xenophobic. The question is there is always a group in a society that is xenophobic, just like there is always a group that dislikes hamburgers and there is a group that likes hamburgers. So can you generalize? It kind of suggests that every person belonging to this group has this kind of attitude. Some Poles are xenophobic, there is a minority, a majority, a big group, some kind of qualifier. But certainly I wouldn't say all Poles are xenophobic, or I wouldn't say all Poles are tolerant. That would be, because certainly there are groups. I'm not sure if there is a bigger group of Poles being xenophobic than in West European countries. I think the biggest difference, though, is in social permission for expressing the hostile attitudes. Social permission on the level of social life, in school, for example, in public, in demonstrations, in workplaces. Well, Germany was a very good example. There was this Pegida movement. I read several stories about them. Every time there was like fascists, neo-fascists. Yeah. But no time a journalist would go to Pegida people and demonstrating and ask them, what are you for? What are you against? Why are you demonstrating? What I mean is that there is a lot of public condemnation of anti-foreigners' attitudes. The media are very hostile to this kind of hostility. In Poland, it is much less so. Media are less hostile. I think that there is a permission by the media, by the politicians, and by other people to express hostility more openly. If you ask people in kind of private, secret environment, then they would say, yeah, I'm against foreigners. Okay. But publicly, they wouldn't say so. In Poland, this is much more, I think, congruent. What people show in public and what they tell you in the polls. There are some groups that are completely opposed to any kind of foreigners.
Would you say there is a difference between how people view different nations in their country?
Yes, absolutely. And according to every poll that I read from Poland, public in general distinguishes all kinds of nationalities. It's not like the majority of Poles are for or against every foreigner. Yeah. There is a ladder of nations that can be accepted or that people are hostile against. The difference is, this is my fantasy, because I don't really know the research. For older people, that's a mixture of curiosity and kind of apprehension sometimes. I think young people are more open to foreigners than older people. Apart from, again, this small minority, one group is gypsies, which is a native group, and the other is Muslims, mostly Arabs.
Why is there a distinction made between Arabs and other Muslims?
Because most of the Muslims in the world are not Arabs, but in Poland, most Muslims that are known are Arabs. Okay. Gypsies are a perfect example of a group that does not integrate. You can help them integrating, but they do not want to be integrated. They are very happy in just traveling around and living the life they like. I think that is the main reason, apart from day-to-day encounters. The gypsies say, we don't care about your lifestyle. We don't like your lifestyle. Our lifestyle is superb, is better than yours. But when somebody who you believe is lower than you says, I don't like you, I don't like the way you live, I think that people want you dare to tell me. With Muslims, the problem is much more complicated. But I think it all goes to the problem of integration or not integration.
Do you think religion plays any role in this?
Absolutely, absolutely, the major role. Taking customs of unbelievers is haram, is a sin. This is a religion that is very strongly based on sin. I had a counter theory then that the hostility toward Muslims in Poland would be higher among people who knew Muslims. And I checked it, and it was true. I thought that lots of Poles go and work abroad, in Germany, in Great Britain. Yeah. And they certainly do have personal encounters, do have personal knowledge of Muslims. It's a very simple research scientific question. If people who got in touch with Muslims, what kind of attitudes do they have? Are they more tolerant or more hostile? And they were more hostile. There was this small group of people who were very positive toward refugees from the Middle East in Poland. And among the people who worked in the Western Europe and returned here, that's why they could be asked, there was some small group that reacted more positively. But if the hostility among the population in general was like, let's say 40%, then the increase was like from 40 to like 50% among the group that was in direct contact. So, well, that was the only way that could be, this hypothesis could be checked. These two groups, gypsies and Muslims, because they do not integrate. And I think, I'm Jewish myself by origin, by many generations ago. I think part of the hostility was religious, of course, in Poland, because Christianity used to be, Catholicism was very anti-Jewish, Jews who murdered Christ. Jews in Poland were a minority that wanted to stay distinct. They did not want to integrate. They wanted to stay separate. They were never hostile toward Poles. They were never a danger in the sense that they were never Jewish terrorism. Getting in touch with people who are very different than you and do not want to become like you. A minority that wants to stay distinct is something that people dislike, because it's questioning of their way of life.
Yeah. What is your personal attitude to foreign people?
It is a disaster for Poland that for the last 60, 70 years. Poland used to be very, very right. Poland had a huge Jewish minority. Poland had German minority, Ukrainian minority, Armenian, Greek, whatever. There are all kinds of minorities. And I know that some level of minorities is perfect. It's very good for social life, for economic life. I personally have nothing against. If there is foreign students, fine, or from all kinds of countries. If there are people looking for work, okay. I don't want to import 2 million Chinese work for half the price of Poles, because that would be stupid. 10%, 20% of the society becoming foreign from all kinds of countries. I think that would be great for Poland. One of the reasons America is so open, why it develops so fast, is that it's so open, so welcoming. Two guys that created Google, one of them was an immigrant from the Soviet Union, a Jewish guy from the Soviet Union.
And what would be some negative aspects in your eyes if Poland became more open and welcoming?
I think till this refugee crisis a year ago, there was no problems. There are up to 1 million Ukrainians studying and working in Poland. The only place where there are problems is Przemysl. That's a city which has a Ukrainian minority, not Ukrainians coming to Poland, but Ukrainian minority, dating back to pre-war Poland. They are kind of descendants of people that killed Poland in Volyn, locals believe, okay? But apart from that, there was no problems with Ukrainians. There are, I don't know, nobody knows probably how many Vietnamese and Chinese are in Poland. These are minorities that are immortal. This is the first such a nation and nationality in the world. Somebody dies, they bury him or her, and then the passport goes to a new person. So the same person lives forever. At least for Poles, it's very difficult to tell if you're Vietnamese, if you're 50 or if you're 30 or something, you know. So this kind of phase. So I heard many stories about it. You know, that they take the passport and so nobody knows how many there are. About maybe 100,000 or something. They go to school and the children go to school. They learn Polish and they work hard. Problems for me is with Muslims, not with individual Muslims. Poland, that we already probably have like 20,000.
Which way would they affect the society negatively in your eyes?
Basically, if they come individually over many years, the only way they affect society is positively. They work, they contribute with their customs, maybe with their food. The problem is when the Muslims begin to arrive in bigger numbers and create communities which attract more and more people. They certainly do not want to integrate. Poles can see that as a big problem in the West, where there are big Muslim minorities. There are very serious problems. For me, inviting and accepting big Muslim minority is just asking for trouble. I cannot see any advantages in accepting a big group of Muslims. I can see many disadvantages. If somebody tells you that Poland has demographic problems and Europe has demographic problems and Muslims are needed to fill the gap, that's bullshit. Muslims do not fill they fill the demographic gap. There are lots of young people coming, but they don't work. If you look at the data, it's the majority supporting the minority. In Germany, I think about 70%, maybe even more, of people in the working age work. Among people who came from outside of European Union, about 50% work. So the difference is even bigger. What does it mean? It means that plus these people who are from outside the European Union their skills are much lower usually, which means that their contribution to the GDP, to the national product is much smaller. If you look at the data, it's the other way around. The second generation that is born in the country, raised in the country, that knows the language, had all the advantages, the same advantages that the locals have,